Hi, welcome to this Highway Tabernacle Tech Team training on ProPresenter Basics. Over the next few videos, my goal is to get you familiar enough with ProPresenter and comfortable enough with ProPresenter that you can not only use the software to run our services, but also go in and make changes to a service, know where things are, know how to get to various places like setting up screens and setting up audience looks and all of that kinds of things. So let's talk about the various videos that I plan to put together. The first one is this one, where we'll talk about getting set up with ProPresenter. Not only installing ProPresenter, but also downloading the training content that I've put together so that we can walk through the training together and everybody's screens will look the same as I'm going through this training. And then we'll get into ProPresenter and talk about the overall layout of ProPresenter. In the next video, we'll discuss layers. Now, layers are very important in ProPresenter because all the information that gets displayed on a screen is built in layers. Certain things are on top of other things. You might have lyrics, for example, that are on top of graphics, things like that. Those are layers. In the third video, we'll talk about setting up screens. Okay, and one of the really nice things that I like about ProPresenter is that you don't have to have physical screens in order to set them up. You can create these virtual screens that match what your physical screens are in the church. So, for example, we'll walk through and create every single one of our screens. The 3 screens that we have in the front of the sanctuary, the screen in the back of the sanctuary, the live stream screen, all of those. So that'll be in the third video. Then in the fourth video, we'll take a look at audience looks. Audience looks lets you determine which layers will get sent to which screens for which part of the service. For example, let's say we're talking about worship. Well, we want the lyrics to be sent to the front screens during the worship. And we also want the lyrics to be sent to the live stream. But when we send them to the live stream, we don't want them in the middle of the screen. We want them at the bottom. Audience looks handle all of that. Okay, so that's what we'll do in the fourth video. Then in the fifth video, we'll talk about playlists. Playlists are basically just services that we create. Maybe it's a prayer service or our Sunday morning service or a funeral service, things like that. So we'll walk through creating our Sunday morning service from scratch so that you can see how it's laid out and how it's configured. All right, we'll do that in the fifth video. In the sixth video, we'll walk through the process of creating the automatic countdown timer that we currently use at Highway, our 5-minute countdown before the service starts. I'll walk you through the entire process of creating that. And then the last 2 videos are more advanced topics. One is the reflow editor. And the reflow editor in ProPresenter is really cool because it lets you take a presentation like a sermon and kind of rearrange things without having to cut and paste and, copy and things like that. So the reflow editor allows you to do that fairly easily. And then we're going to talk about lyrics, lyric arrangements. In ProPresenter, if our worship songs are set up properly so that the verses are identified, the choruses, the bridges, things like that, then whenever you need to rearrange a song, let's say you want the bridge at the beginning of the song, it's just a matter of dragging and dropping to put the bridge at the beginning of the song. No more copy and paste and cutting and kind of reformatting the entire song to do that. So that's what arrangements are. All right, and that's it. That's all the videos that I'm planning to do. There may be more as the training goes on, but these are the ones that I'm planning for. All right, so initial setup. So one of the first things I'd like you to do is to take a look at, there's a link at the bottom of this video that points to my Google Drive where you'll find the training content. So if I open this, it'll take you to this page, and then you'll just download it. Now, my apologies, it is over a gig big, okay? It's got announcement videos in there, and a lot of our motion graphics, the widescreen ones especially, are fairly large. So that's why it's that big. But download this zip file and then extract it to any folder on your machine. Now, I put it on my D drive. So here's the zip file that you'll get, and you'll see it's just over a gig large. But I extracted it here, and then you'll have these folders inside. And we'll be using these folders throughout the training. Okay, so we'll start there. The next thing, once you've downloaded the training material and extracted it, the next thing is to download ProPresenter and get it installed on your machine. So how do we do that? Well, there's also a link down below to the Renewed Vision website, and it's this /ProPresenter/download link. And this is where you're going to find ProPresenter. So you're just going to select your operating system. I happen to be on a Windows, so I'm going to select Windows. And by the way, version 18 is now out as of a couple of weeks ago. So I'll select Windows. And it brings me to this dialog, and they're asking you to fill out this form. You don't actually have to do that. You can if you like, but I would select the download only, and then it's asking you again to pick your operating system. So I'm going to select Windows, and it'll download it for me. As soon as you click on Windows, it'll start downloading. Okay, now I've already done that, so if I go back here to my operating system, I go to my Downloads folder. Here is that ProPresenter 18 setup. So when you install this on your machine, we'll just go through the installation process. It's pretty simple. It doesn't take long. So on my machine, it's putting it in this program files. Now, when you get to this screen, it asks you if there are, which one of these older versions of ProPresenter do you want to be able to import? I typically would deselect all of these because we don't use the older versions. So click Next. And then here, and then we're going to click Next. Now, I will caution you before you finish, if you already have ProPresenter installed on your machine, you're going to want to rename a folder. So before you actually run ProPresenter, let's go in and rename that. And again, this is only if you've already got ProPresenter installed and have been using it. So we'll click Next here, Install. And you can see this doesn't take very long at all. And now I don't want to launch ProPresenter, so I'm going to uncheck this Launch ProPresenter checkbox and just finish. And the reason for that is I want to show you where to find the ProPresenter folder, okay? So I'm just going to finish. Now on your machine, ProPresenter puts its folder into your Documents folder. So in here, in your Documents folder, you'll find, if you have ProPresenter already installed, you'll find a folder called ProPresenter. Okay, and I'm just going to create one just to simulate what it would look like. So it'll look exactly like this. So if you go to your Documents folder and you already have a ProPresenter folder in there, you need to rename this so that I'm just going to call it ProPresenter Original or something. Something so that you'll know that this was your original ProPresenter before you reinstalled it. Okay? Just make sure that in your Documents folder you do not have a folder called ProPresenter, because ProPresenter is it's either going to create a brand new one, which is what I want to do for this training series, because I want everybody to start from scratch, okay? If you already have one, it's just going to open that one and it'll have all of your content in it. So I'd like you to rename it so that you'll start from scratch with the rest of us, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and start ProPresenter. And I should now be able to launch ProPresenter. It'll come up here in just a second. And this is what you're going to see when it launches. You don't have to have a license for ProPresenter. If you're using it just for editing purposes or for training purposes. Okay, so it's asking you to activate it, but you can skip it. And I recommend just skipping it. Okay, we do have a license. We have a campus license, which gives us, multiple people can have copies of it. But there's really no reason to use the license unless you're actually going to use it to present something. Okay, so we're going to skip for now. And then this is our ProPresenter layout. So one of the first things that I'd like you to do, we're going to do a couple things here before we talk about the layout itself. I want to bring in the training. So down here, if you don't have this section down here where it says Media, Pro Content, and Playlist, if this is not here for you, go up to this toolbar and click on Media. Okay, when you select that, it's going to show or hide this Media section. So one of the first things I want to do is to bring in the training material so that we can use it throughout the training. So to do that, you're going to come down here to Playlists and click on this plus sign to add a smart playlist. A smart playlist puts a folder in ProPresenter that points to another folder on your computer somewhere. Okay, so we're going to do Smart Playlist. And when you do that, it's going to open up a dialog asking you to point to the folder on your computer. Now for me, I'd like it to go to my D drive, ProPresenter Training Start. Okay, so that's the folder that I extracted from that zip file. So I'm going to select that, select folder, and when you do that, you'll see that it'll bring in all the training material that we're going to use. All the slides. This is a video, an announcement video, and so on. Okay, so that's step one. Add that ProPresenter Training Smart Playlist. Okay, step two. I want to bring in some default library items. So notice up here we have this default library, which is how ProPresenter starts. Now you can create multiple libraries in here, and a library contains anything that you're going to present on a screen. That'll be a part of your library. And like I said, you can create multiples. In our default library, I would like you to import some of the library worship songs that we use at Highway. Okay, so to do that, we're going to come up to File, Import File. Okay, so File, Import File. The Import File function lets us import multiple types of files for ProPresenter. So we're going to select File, Import File, and then it's going to ask us to find the file. in this ProPresenter Training Start folder in our training material, you'll find this Highway Worship file. Go ahead and open that, and it'll import it. And now you'll notice in our default library we have these songs. So these are some of the worship songs that we use, that we have at Highway. Okay, these are just for training purposes, but we're going to bring those in. Okay, so that was step 2. Step 1, creating this ProPresenter Training Start Smart Playlist. Step 2, import these songs. And step 3, now we're going to actually add some ProPresenter training or sample content. Okay, so we're going to have a brand new playlist. And remember, a playlist is basically a service. So we're going to ask ProPresenter to bring in its own sample content so that we can use that to start our training. All right. So to do that, you're going to go to, I believe it's Window, Welcome to ProPresenter. Okay, so up here, Window, Welcome to ProPresenter. And when you click on that, it's going to open this dialog, and it's going to show you, basically give you a little bit of tutorial about the layout of ProPresenter. So feel free to go through these if you like. I'm just going to skip this tutorial. And then it's asking you to choose audience screens. ProPresenter has to have at least one screen configured. Okay, so that'll typically, if you only have one screen, that will be the screen that's selected here. I have 2 screens on my computer right now, so it's just picking my current one, which I want it to be this one. As far as stage screens, we'll talk about what stage screens are, but you can just leave this as nothing. There is none selected. Okay, and then we can continue. I recommend having House of Worship selected here, and I don't like to send crash reports or ProPresenter analytics. But House of Worship will give us things like the Bible functionality and other things. Okay, so make sure that's selected. And then continue. And this is where now we're going to download our sample content. This takes a while. Okay, on my machine, it typically takes about 15 minutes to download everything. So go ahead and click Download Sample Content. And what will happen here, you can see it, is there'll be a circle started. And this circle will eventually be completely full as it's downloading. Okay, so you can see it's starting to download the content. And when it's done, it's going to create a brand new library called Sample, and then create a sample playlist. Instead of this default playlist, we'll have a sample playlist. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just let that download, and I will pause the video and see you when it's done. Okay, it's just about done, and you'll see as soon as this finishes, there we go, it finished. Now we have this sample library up here. So if I click on the sample library, you'll see the library items that are in here. And remember, the library items are anything that you're going to present to a screen will be here in the library. All right, and then we have this sample playlist, and the sample playlist, a playlist, remember, is the actual service, okay, in our case. So you can see they've got it laid out into pre-show and music and presentation. So this is pretty similar to what we have. We have rolling announcements at the beginning of our service, and then we move on to worship, which they call music here. And then after worship, what they don't have here that we will add is our video announcements, right? Our welcome. You know, typically someone will come up and welcome everybody, and then maybe give them some announcements that aren't in the video announcements, last minute kinds of things, and then we do the video announcements. And then once that's over, then we get into the message. which they call presentation here. So that's the idea. So let's go ahead and keep going here. You can continue in this dialog, this continue button down here. Go ahead and click that. And then you'll get to this last page on the dialog. And one of the things that I really recommend that you do is go into the tutorials. There are some really great ProPresenter tutorials out there. That's how I learned, okay, by watching YouTube videos and the tutorials from Renewed Vision. These are really good. Okay, so let's just click Get Started and we'll continue on. So that's going to close this dialog, and you can see we selected this song. But if I go here to my playlist, make sure Sample Playlist is selected, and let's just click on Announcements. And what you'll see is the announcement slides will show up here. All right, so how is this laid out? We will talk about these toolbar items throughout the training. We'll talk about some of them today, but most of them we'll save for future videos. Okay. Up here in the upper left, we have our libraries. We had that default library, which if you select it, will show the music, the worship songs that we imported. Okay, there we go. And then the sample library was created by ProPresenter when we brought in the sample content. And then the playlist. So what you see below it depends on what you have selected up here. So if you have a library item selected, you're going to see library items below. If you have a playlist selected, you'll have playlist items below. I don't think that there's a way to show both. There used to be in an older version of ProPresenter, but I don't think that's possible anymore. At least I haven't found a way. Okay, so just make sure that you know which is selected up here, whether it's a library or the playlist. That's how you'll see what's down here. Then next to that, you have this section, which is your, basically it's your playlist. So when we selected the playlist and we selected any item, you're going to be able to scroll down now here and see all the different parts of this playlist all the way through. Okay, now a word of caution: if you select a playlist item and you're not seeing the entire list, then there may be one setting that is incorrect or not set. And that is up here under View. So if I go to View, notice that Continuous Playlist is selected. If this is selected, then you're going to see your entire playlist here. If I go up here and I turn this off, if I just deselect it, then it's only going to show the item that you have selected. Okay? So if you get to a point where you're only seeing one item at a time, then you want to make sure that this continuous playlist is turned on. Okay, so this is where you're going to see all your slides and everything in your current presentation. To the upper right, this is where you can see, you can select multiple screens to see what is being displayed on each screen. So at Highway, we have our front screens, our live stream screen in here. We have our back screens. So you can select any screen to see what's currently being displayed. For example, if I come up here and click on one of these slides, you'll see that that slide is being displayed now on this screen. Okay? And since this is the announcements, it's actually set up to be rolling announcements to go from one to the next. Then over here are our clear buttons. Okay, we talked a little bit about layers. Remember, layers in ProPresenter are very important. ProPresenter shows information on the screen based on the different layers. And this is where you can clear those layers. Okay, so if I wanted to clear media, this is media right here. Media is the actual graphics, right? So if I were to select this to clear it, it would clear that graphics off of the screen until it goes to the next one. All right, let me do it down here. So down here we have this background graphic, which is the waterfall kind of thing. So if I clear it here, it's just going to clear the graphics part of it, while the slide, which is this layer, will still show. So the slide layer is built on top of the graphics layer. And if I clear the slide layer, then that would be everything, right? Selecting the slide shows everything. This big one here is clear all. So if I click on this, it's just going to clear everything. All right, so that's clear. Then down here, let me go back to this. Down here we have our play items. I'm not really sure what the official name is of them, but depending on what you're showing, like for right now, you can kind of see it here, but these are motion graphics. So this is the play of the motion graphics. So this is the presentation play. So if I were to pause this, it'll pause the motion graphics. Okay. The next one is announcements. We have a special layer up here just to show announcements. Now these announcements are not part of that layer, and I'll show you when we get to the next video. I'll show you how to change that. But the announcements, if you had announcements layer going, you could control that here. And then the next one is our audio. So if you have songs and so on in here that you wanted to play, you could control those through these controls for audio. Okay. And then below that we have 6 tabs. These 6 tabs control different functionality inside of ProPresenter. The first one is audio. So this is where you would set up any playlists, right? Any MP3s or songs that you want to bring into ProPresenter, you can do that through this audio tab. The next one is stage. Stage refers to the back screen that we have at Highway. Okay, so stage displays are displays that show to the people on stage. The next is timers. So this is where you can set up various timers. The sample content that we brought in these 3 timers. We're not going to use any of them, but they are here. The next one is messages. So there is a layer called messages, and this messages section down here lets us add messages onto the screen so that anybody in the audience would be able to see those messages. And because the messages layer is at the very top, it doesn't matter what else is showing on the screen, the message will be shown on top of that. Okay, so those are messages. The next one are props. So this is our props layer. We use props at Highway to show a graphic on the center screen. So whenever we have something showing on the outside screens, like our announcement video, we want to show some graphic in the middle. So we use props for that. Many churches use props for title slides. So if you want to show, this is Pastor Gary Gray, he's our lead pastor. That kind of title slide can show, and then after a few seconds, automatically hide. Okay, so that's what props are for. And then the last one are macros. So macros are a way to group actions in ProPresenter together. So you might want to make sure that the outside screens are being shown. You might want to make sure that the announcements layer is cleared, and you might want to make sure that the back screen is showing the correct information to the stage, to the people on stage. you want to do all of those, you can combine all of those actions into one macro so that whenever you click on a slide, all of those actions would be done all at once, okay? Instead of dragging individual actions. Okay, so that's what macros are. And then the last piece, we've seen this, is this media section down here. And again, the media section will show if you select the media button up here. That's how you show and hide the media. So I'm going to make sure it's hide. It's hidden for the next video. Okay? And that's pretty much it, all I wanted to do in this particular video. We grabbed our training content, we installed ProPresenter, we brought our training content into ProPresenter, we brought sample content into ProPresenter, and we did a brief introduction to the layout of ProPresenter. I hope you learned some things. I will see you in the next video. We're going to talk about layers. So we'll talk about each of these layers and how they're used in ProPresenter. I hope to see you there.